All right, welcome in, everyone. Here we go once again for Matchday -1. Adrian, Healey, and Michael Lahoud. Back with you from St. David's Performance Center ahead of Michael Austin against RSL on Wednesday night at Q2 Stadium. Before we get into everything, little happy birthday today for the man whose jersey we have hanging high. Mr. Johan Romagna, who turns the ripe old age of 24. Can you remember what it feels like to be 24, Michael?
Yes, I can.
You have a more fresh memory than I do of that.
Yeah, yes, I can. My Sierra Leone passport could tell you.
Oh, really?
I'm kidding. I kid. I'm actually kidding, folks.
So happy birthday, Johan. It was good to see him get some minutes in the last game. And we won't need to talk too much about the last game or the last three games. What we will launch into is the home stretch, because here we are. 4 games to go. 3 of the final 4 games at Q2 Stadium, which is great, isn't it? And everything is still very much in front of us, Michael. Despite recent wobbles, we are exactly where we are, where we started at this 3-week stretch, and we'll be looking to tap into some of that mojo from the LAFC game, which for me, I think for both of us, still reverberates, even though it's 2.5 weeks ago. But it's going to be good to be home, basically.
There's no place like home, and there's no place like Q2 Stadium. Austin FC going on the road for 2 games in 2 difficult places to play in Nashville and Seattle, and now it's teed up for a special week that could be a special week that I very much think this team is ready for. And there is a difference at training today, a bit more bite, a bit more level-headedness, I think, given the circumstances, and I expect a response tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was great to see them out there. A lot of positivity here in the building this morning. I think there's a determination just to finally get this job done. And listen, tomorrow, a win or a draw against RSL books the playoff spot. What is a little more unofficial and is not, it's not something that can be totally mathematically determined tomorrow, but a win tomorrow against RSL pretty much ensures a home playoff game. It pretty much ensures a top 4 place. For that not to happen, I think it would require one of either the Galaxy or Minnesota to win all their remaining games. And, this is MLS. That doesn't happen too often. So basically, the prize is dangling there in a very enticing manner tomorrow night.
I think the body of work to get to this point cannot be emphasized enough. Yeah. They've earned every right to be on the precipice of making the playoffs and also on the precipice of earning a home playoff game. Let's go back to where we started a year ago. Being in this place, if you'd have told anyone in that locker room, hey, in a year's time, stick with it, you're going to be in this position, they would take it. And here they are now. What I like that I'm hearing from players and staff alike, it's get the result, get in the playoffs first, and then work your way up. I think when you beat an LAFC, you're at the top. It's a lot to really take in. It's a lot of supporter shield focus, playoff focus. This team has goals, and they've done well by keeping their feet on the ground and having one goal in mind at a time. First come playoffs, then home playoff game secured.
Yeah. That physical and emotional intensity is what they want to recapture. And let's face it, we also saw it at the start of the Portland Timbers game following LAFC. They picked up right where they left off. The only difference was they didn't actually get that early breakthrough. Had they done that in that game, I think that would have been another home win. But Michael, you've played in this league, and you know what it takes. And that intensity doesn't have to drop by much, does it? We were talking a couple of percentage points here. It doesn't have to drop by much for other teams to be able to take advantage. And they've been playing teams in the last 2 or 3 weeks who are fighting for their own playoff lives.
It's so hard to replicate. There's nothing you can replicate against that. When teams are playing in desperation mode, they will do things that they don't normally do. In the last 2 games and some of the previous opponents, you have star players who don't normally defend coming back and defending, saving crosses, blocking shots, and then hitting in transition moments. I think for Austin FC, it's matching the strength of these teams, matching the mentality, because they do have the quality, they do have the individual moments of brilliance to win matches. in both boxes. Can you win the battle in both boxes defensively, getting back to being sound defensively first? I think that's what I'm looking forward to tomorrow night, because having Sebastian Driussi potentially back in the lineup, having Diego Fagundes and that relationship reestablished, we know that good things happen when those two feel secure by what's happening behind them defensively.
Well, let's move to Wednesday night and talk about the opposition, because in some ways they do fall into the same category, don't they? Another team fighting for their playoff lives, and they have very little margin for error, don't they? They're in 7th place at the moment, RSL, but only 3 points above the line. A couple of teams nipping at their heels in the Galaxy in Seattle. So, coming off a fairly disappointing 0-0 draw against DC, where if you watch the highlights of that game, they should have won comfortably, shouldn't they? But what do we expect? Because in some ways they are the same sort of opponent, but they're also very different opponents, aren't they, to the last 2 or 3 teams we played? They're a lot more sort of basic in their tactical setup, 4-4-2, a lot of speed up front. But what do Austin have to be wary of, do you think, and do well against RSL?
Similar pattern to a lot of the teams that have come to Q2 Stadium that have caused problems for Austin. Defensive transition. It's being preventative when Austin have the ball. When you play against a 4-4-2, it's 2 banks of 4 defenders who will stay narrow and play for crosses, and also 4 midfielders who will run and try and block every entry pass into the likes of Driussi, Fagundes, Maxi Ruti. That is where Danny Pereira, Alex Ring, being on both sides of the ball, becomes so crucial, keeping plays alive, smothering them, because although Salt Lake play in altitude, the heat will always be a factor in Texas. It's still hot in Texas.
Yeah.
For us, 100 degrees, it's not 100 degrees, but for other teams coming here, 90 degrees, 95 degrees, that's sweltering for most teams. I think when you wear down a team like this, opportunities come, and especially getting them in transition, being smart defensively in transition, but also being intense in your movement, being direct in your movement offensively. Yeah,
we can hurt that centre-back pairing, can't we, in transition, Glad and Silva. The games between these two teams have been tight. That's been the history. We beat them, you might remember, at Q2 Stadium last October, 2-1, and on a home Sunday afternoon game, I think it was. We lost up there earlier this season, 2-1. But that was a game we could easily have got something out of, and probably should have done. We were 1-0 up, Alex Ring scoring, Danny Pereira picking up the red card, kind of changed things early in the second half, didn't it?
For RSL, they want to make it combative. It's in the nature of their team, because their head coach was a very combative player. Josh Wolf knows him well. I played against him and
Mr. Mastroeni
got kicked a lot by him. They're a team that will compete for everything, and they, even if they're down a couple goals, it's ingrained in them to fight to the final whistle. When they come on the road, they're going to be that much more lower in a low block and try and hit on the counter. For Austin, what I like in their approaches against RSL when they played them in games past, they've gotten early goals.
Yeah.
So RSL start to games, they kind of take some time to grow into games, but they're a team that if you don't punish and leave them hanging around, they do have the quality to get one against the grain.
Yeah, they do. The games have been tight and low scoring between these two teams. And that's been RSL's kind of modus operandi this season, low-scoring games. They've only scored 38 goals. They've only conceded 38. So they've scored way less than us, but they've conceded less too. Is it going to be that sort of affair tomorrow night, Michael? We haven't been involved in too many of those. And can we get that killer instinct back in front of goal? Just that sharpness that we saw against LAFC last, and just has kind of deserted us a little bit over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
I think the team has it in them.
Yeah.
I think you and I talked about it at training, that there's going to be a response. Playing at Q2 Stadium, the fans, the whole city behind them. You saw what happens when the city of Austin gets behind a sports team. University of Texas, football, Alabama, they showed up inches away from a milestone victory. For Austin FC, I think of the Portland game. Let's go back to that. Yeah. If that ball goes in, then we're talking a totally different landscape of what we're looking at. This is going to be kind of a similar effect of, in the first 30 minutes, can you get that knockout blow with that first goal? Because Austin has shown that once the first goal goes in, momentum is at their back. And this is a team with momentum at their back. They're as good as anyone in MLS.
Yeah. And I think they found that extra little incentive now. A lot of talk in the building this morning about, hey, second place. We want to hold on to second place. That's really important. It gets you two playoff games potentially. We also want to stay above Dallas. We want to be the top team in Texas. That is whatever it takes to find that inner motivation, that inner edge, that intensity. It's great to hear.
I think what I like most of all hearing that is players talking about their individual matchups.
Yeah.
We talked with the likes of Nick Lima, some of the players that he might be going up against, some of our defenders, really getting back to that instinctive pride in winning your individual matchups and keeping that zero. I think that was one of the biggest shifts I saw between last year and this year, was as focused as we were on getting goals offensively, there was definitely a pride about the team on being resolute defensively.
So I wonder whether those conversations that we've had this morning and yesterday has had a direct impact on the Lahoud mood heading into Wednesday night, the start of this home stretch, the start of this final 4 games. I'm very, very keen to get the full picture of the Lahoud mood. So where are you going?
Adrian, we'll start out by saying the mood is hopeful. And not just because I got a good rest on the train ride up, which always helps the mood.
You fell asleep on the train.
Definitely fell asleep thinking of the mood. But the mood is hopeful. And for Austin FC to be hopeful of getting 3 points, getting a result, and getting into the playoffs, they'll have to do these 2 pre-mood things. Number 1, when you're playing against RSL, they are a direct team. You press them, they kick the ball long to their target striker, number 10. You have to win second balls. Danny Pereira, Alex Ring, their ability to shift back from pressing positions to defensive positions is going to be crucial because it leads to the next thing, transition. This is a game that will be decided on transition. The team that is best on transition will not just get the result, but win the game outright on the night.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. I share your I have a good feeling about this. I love the fact that Sebastian Juicy potentially back in the starting lineup and a little bit of rest, time to get over the knee issue, sorting out his yellow card issues as well. I think he'll be raring to go, and every chance we see more of Emiliano Rigoni as well, and it'd be great to see those two, continue their flowering, blossoming partnership, which hasn't had much chance to kind of reestablish itself yet.
And the player that I'm thinking is going to thrive most of all in all this is Maxi Ruti.
Yeah.
Against Seattle, he had some counterattacks, and credit to him for fighting till the very end. Love that from Maxi. Team player will run himself into the ground. But when you get order restored in the attack, service comes to his feet, and he's a striker who thrives on service. Hope we see a little bit more of what we saw against LAFC tomorrow night, because he was lights out in that game.
Yep. An old friend for many of the players and coaching staff here back in town tomorrow. Now it's Justin Miram. That's going to be an interesting battle to watch. I think Nick Lima is chomping at the bit to get into that, and Ethan Finley, if he's involved. The two of those are very close friends, aren't they? So.
It shows how small the soccer world really is. And these are the feel-good stories that you love to see before the ball is kicked. But make no mistake about it, as soon as that whistle blows, the likes of a Nick Lima, the likes of Ethan Finley, hey, friendship goes out the window for 90 minutes, and then you can be friends afterwards.
Yeah. What was it you said? You actually enjoy beating your friends more than anyone else, which was great.
Can attest to that.
Zach Mcmath in goal, is that an area that Austin? He's an interesting keeper to me. He's never been like top-notch, top echelon keeper. He's always been solid, but has a mistake in him. He's
a goalkeeper I know from my time with Philadelphia. He was young U.S. youth national team draft selection. And I always thought that anytime he was going to take that next step, there would be a bit of just overexuberance on his part. A player who's a confidence player that thrives off big saves, reflex saves to really get his confidence going. But you can catch him in his positioning off his line quite a bit, inconsistent with his positioning in the end.
Yeah, I was just checking him out. I can't believe he's already 31. I still think of him as a young kid. He's 31. God. Okay, a moment of gratitude. Talking of young players, a good candidate this week, the Austin FC Academy, who kicked off their season last weekend in Houston. The U17s and the U13s both earning very impressive 3-0 shutout victories against the Dynamo Academy teams at that age range. So that for starters. Wow. There's also been more call-ups for the the U.S. national team at various age groups that we can get into, Michael. But once again, the academy, we should be really thankful for what we already have, just not even 2 years into the history of this club.
And that goes down to the work of Tyson Wall and his staff, and also the players. You always have to give credit to these young athletes for them taking on the Austin FC way and the philosophies that they're given. In a year's time or a couple years' time, we should also be excited to see one of our own, maybe a local Austin tonight, getting on the field at QT Stadium. That will be a milestone moment that the academy is working towards.
Yeah, and Micah Burton is probably leading that race, isn't he? To be that player. He's had another call up for the US under-17s. He's going to go over to the Czech Republic and represent the US in the. I'll give it a go. The Václav Ježek tournament. That's my attempt at some fine Czech pronunciation. But hey, he scored against Uruguay and Portugal last year, didn't he? So go Micah again.
A player who's had some time with the first team, training week in and week out, and that can only boost your confidence as a young player. Cannot wait to see his development and the development of a lot of these young athletes.
Yep. So that's 6 players in the Austin Academy who've earned call-ups this year. Just more evidence of the strength and the growth of what we have here. And that partnership with PSV we signed last week is only going to aid that as well. So that'll do it for today, Michael. Wednesday night we are on My Network TV, KBVO, which is channel, 14.1 for those of you with the rabbit ears up. We have an extended pregame show to tell you about as well. We will be on the air from 7:30 onwards tomorrow with a couple of special guests as well on the desk. Myself, you, Michael, Sonny, and Roger. And plenty of time to get into things. I think we'll have a full 45 minutes pregame.
Can't wait to do a deep dive on what I think could be a marquee game and potential marquee result for the Verde and Black.
Yeah, remember, slightly different kickoff time as well tomorrow. It's to do with the Campeones Cup and not wanting to kick off at the same time. So it's officially like an 8:15 kickoff. In likelihood, it'll be probably slightly later than that. But hope to see you all at Q2 Stadium tomorrow. Thanks so much for hopping on board with us on Matchday -1. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And then quick turnaround with Nashville in town on Saturday as well. We'll see you for that one as well.